Sweden and Ukraine have opened a new chapter in European air power politics, moving beyond ad hoc donations toward an industrial-scale partnership that could reshape Kyiv's combat aviation for the next decade. A letter of intent signed in Linköping signals that Stockholm is prepared to explore exporting between 100 and 150 Gripen E fighter jets, with President Volodymyr Zelensky stating plainly that Ukraine will seek no fewer than 100 aircraft in any eventual deal. It is not a contract and no delivery schedule exists, but the signal is striking. A core Nordic defense producer is ready to consider building a full Western fighter backbone for a country at war, on a scale usually reserved for long-term modernization programs in peacetime. The political optics matter as much as the numbers. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson made the announcement at Saab's facilities, underscoring both Sweden's confidence in its national champion and the country's evolution as it completes integration into NATO. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, Stockholm has steadily expanded military assistance and tightened defense links across Europe. Entertaining a three-figure export of advanced fighters would mark Sweden's most consequential aerospace contribution yet, moving from incremental aid to a strategic bet on Ukraine's air superiority over the medium term. For Kyiv, it signals a path away from dependence on Soviet-era fleets toward a modern, interoperable force designed to plug into Western sensor networks, munitions pipelines, and training ecosystems. The Gripen E, while sharing lineage with earlier Gripen variants, is in practice a contemporary platform, built around an AESA radar, robust electronic warfare and decoy systems, advanced data links, and a cockpit optimized for networked operations. Its appeal for Ukraine is not confined to brochure specifications. The aircraft was designed for dispersed basing on short or improvised runways, with modest ground crews and quick turnarounds, precisely the operating concept Kyiv has embraced under constant missile and drone pressure. The jet's maintenance philosophy, emphasizing availability and low logistics overhead, addresses a brutal reality: Ukraine must expand combat capacity without overburdening fuel, spares, and technician pipelines already stretched by war. Yet the industrial arithmetic will determine whether ambition becomes airframes. Saab's production capacity, existing export obligations, and Sweden's own force requirements constrain how quickly new jets could roll off the line. A package sized at 100 to 150 aircraft implies multi-year output and a sustained financing plan. Export approvals, end-user agreements, and weapons integration clearances will require coordination not only inside Sweden but across partner nations that supply key subsystems and munitions. Even if the political will is present, contract structuring, leasing versus purchase, grant funding versus long-term credits, phased deliveries versus block buys, will shape timelines. The letter of intent creates working groups to analyze these questions. It does not answer them. Training is the second long pole in the tent. Ukrainian pilots have already conducted evaluation flights in Sweden, proof of concept that the transition is technically feasible. Scaling that into a pipeline capable of producing crews, instructors, and tacticians for three-digit fleet numbers is another order of magnitude. Aircrew proficiency is only the visible tip. Ground crews, mission planners, and electronic warfare specialists must be cultivated in tandem, and simulators, syllabi, and language-ready technical manuals must be fielded. Ukraine's F-16 transition provides a useful reference point. Parallel type conversions can be orchestrated if partners synchronize curricula and allocate enough instructors and simulator time, but capacity will be the constraint. A realistic path would see initial operational capability emerge with a modest cadre, followed by a steady ramp as training throughput increases and maintenance culture matures around the new type. Weapons integration will be a third gating factor. Gripen E supports long-range air-to-air and air-to-surface weapons, including standoff options that could complicate Russian planning. But the value of those capabilities depends on stocks, replenishment rates, and export sign-offs. If the end state is a mixed Ukrainian fighter force, F-16s and Gripens operating together, the opportunity is to tailor roles, one type could prioritize air defense and counter-air patrols while the other leans into suppression of enemy air defenses, standoff strikes, or maritime interdiction. Interoperability becomes a virtue. Common data links, shared targetable coordinates, and aligned identification friend or foe profiles can allow composite packages to mass effects even when airframes and weapons differ. That vision, however, presumes the slow, bureaucratic work of aligning standards, integrating mission planning systems, and teaching squadrons to fight as a combined team. Strategically, Sweden's move would reverberate beyond the Ukrainian theater. A commitment to study a transfer of up to 150 jets tells European capitals that Stockholm believes its industry can expand output while maintaining national readiness. It also signals to Moscow that Ukraine's air power trajectory is not bound to a single donor's production line or inventory. A diversified fighter mix complicates Russian threat modeling, different radars, electronic countermeasure suites, and tactics compress the value of a one-size-fits-all counter. For NATO, the potential Gripen pillar inside Ukraine's Air Force promises better data sharing with Baltic and Nordic air policing architectures, creating a de facto buffer of interoperable sensors at the alliance's edge, even before formal treaty guarantees extend to Kyiv. Still, expectations should be tempered. The path from letter of intent to contract is typically measured in months, and from contract to first squadron in years, even under wartime urgency. Industrial offsets, sustainment depots, and local maintenance training centers will need to be planned. Fiscal cycles in Sweden and partner states must align. Ukraine's own budget and donor financing must be synchronized across competing priorities, from air defense missiles to artillery shells to infrastructure repair. Political calendars can intrude as well. Elections and coalition dynamics in Europe can slow or accelerate export decisions. None of these hurdles are insurmountable, but they are real, and they impose a cadence that operational need alone cannot dictate. There is also a question of sequencing with ongoing F-16 deliveries. Ukraine's leadership has been clear that it needs volume and survivability, not just technology. A Gripen E roadmap complements that logic if executed as an additive program rather than a trade-off. Early batches could focus on establishing a training nucleus and a maintenance baseline, while later tranches, potentially equipped with specialized pods and standoff weapons, push deeper into contested airspace as Ukrainian integrated air and missile defense improves. The long-term dividend would be resiliency, the ability to absorb losses without losing capability, to alternate basing sites frequently, and to keep sortie rates high even when supply lines are stressed. On the Swedish side, the calculus includes reputational risk and opportunity. Successfully fielding a large Gripen fleet in a high-intensity environment would be a powerful endorsement of Saab's design philosophy and support model. It would also require Sweden to expand spares production, pilot training slots, and software update cycles at pace, while ensuring its own squadrons remain fully equipped. That balance will be closely watched by other prospective buyers, some of whom have historically weighed the Gripen's cost-effectiveness against the gravitational pull of U.S. supply chains. Delivering for Ukraine without hollowing out national forces would demonstrate that European industrial capacity can scale under pressure. What the Linköping announcement ultimately offers is clarity of intent. Ukraine intends to build a modern, survivable air force at scale. Sweden is willing to explore being a principal architect of that transition. The details, funding models, production slots, training throughput, weapons packages, interoperable mission systems, are where this story will either accelerate or stall. But for the first time, both sides have put realistic numbers on the table and begun the structured work to make them plausible. In a war where air superiority remains contested and incremental gains are hard-won, the promise of a triple-digit Western fighter fleet is not just a procurement headline. It is a strategy for endurance, deterrence, and eventual leverage, if the politics, industry, and training pipelines can move in lockstep.